Good day, everyone. I am Julian Gaspar, and I am pleased to present my thesis entitled Policy Proposal on the Recruitment and Selection Practices of Aircraft Mechanic of General Aviation Industry. The initial steps in managing human resources, like employees, towards the company's objectives are recruitment and selection. They are the most fundamental and yet most significant of all human resource management practices since they represent vigorous staffing plans. Bad recruiting and selection practices are widespread in society, and the aviation business is no exception. Problems include no written policy on employees' recruitment and selection, unclear policies, accommodations of referrals with insufficient qualification, and hiring of employees without going through a standard operating procedures because they have insider connections. This shortcut commonly result in the hiring of an incompetent employee. Employees are the organization's most valuable asset, and the competency and professionalism of its employees are critical to its success. As a result, whether you work for a private or public organization, it is vital to employ the right individual for the job. Simply, recruiting methods aim to develop a pool properly skilled, capable, and experienced personnel from which successful selection techniques and decisions may be made. As a beneficial contributions to the organization's overall outcome, a recruiting strategy should be developed and integrated with the organization's human resource policies. This policy will influence the overall human resource management methods, laws, and labor market conditions. For this statement of the problem, first is what is the profile of participants in terms of age, sex, civil status, highest educational attainment, employment status, and length of service. Second, what is the recruitment and selection practices of aircraft mechanic in the general aviation industry as perceived by the participants in terms of for recruitment practices as to internal recruitment, external recruitment, and academic qualification. For selection practices, selection instrument use, selection assessment tools, types of interview, methods of interview, persons involved in the interview, characteristics appraised during interview, documentary requirements, background investigation, and methods of background investigation. Third, how efficient is the recruitment and selection practices of aircraft mechanic in the general aviation industry as assessed by the participants? Fourth, is there a significant difference between the perceptions of aircraft mechanic and human resource managements on the recruitment and selection practices? Fifth, what are the government policies for the implementation of standard recruitment and selection practices in the general aviation industry? Six, based on the research finding, what policy can be proposed to improve the recruitment and selection practices of aircraft mechanics in the general aviation industry? According to Ayesha Yasin 2015, the organization must remind the critical role of human resources in employee selections and recruitment. The recommendations of her studies are as follows. The organization should maintain a proper formal written recruitment and selection process. For all positions classified as managerial, the organization uses structured interviews. All employees should be aware of the selection and recruitment policy as well as the selection of recruitment criteria. Another related literature studied by Khan, Ahmed, and Neoji of 2011 conducted a study on Bangladesh public sector and discovered that HR departments, particularly those in charge of recruiting and selections, are poor. The HR department does not do adequate job analysis, which results in poor job descriptions, and as a result, it creates a problem with recruiting and selection in public organizations. For the research paradigm, these are the following elements which was used for the creations of policy proposal. First is the profile of participants, followed by recruitment and selection practices of aircraft mechanics in the general aviation as perceived by the participants, followed by government policies for the implementation of standard recruitment and selection practices in the general aviation industry. The researcher used a survey questionnaire to evaluate the efficiency and provide an analysis of different determinants for recruitment and selection practices. For research methodology, the descriptive research design was employed using quantitative data. Data were collected through survey questionnaire from 30 aircraft maintenance personnel and 25 administrators represented by human resource manager, company owners, and supervisor to ascertain the responses of the respondents for the analysis and interpretations of data. Furthermore, this study utilized and applied the four-point Likert scale. Relatively, the location of the study was in Manila General Aviation, located in Pasay City. Because of the current situation and limitation brought by COVID-19 pandemic, the survey questionnaire were created and were disseminated online through Google Forms. The Google Form link was forwarded to their respective Facebook Messenger account and emails of the selected participants where they have been requested to answer. For statistical treatment, the gathered data was recorded, tabulated, and interpreted through the use of the following statistical tools: percentage, weighted mean, and Mann-Whitney U-test. For the SOP number 1, the findings are the participants were primarily 20 to 30 years old or 45.5%. Majority of the participants were males with 44 or 80% and were married with 30 or 54.5%. Most of them were bachelor's degree with 36 or 65.6% and indeterminate for employment status with 44 or 80%. Most of them were 1 into 5 years in service with 32 or 52.8%. As a conclusion, most of the participants were 20 to 30 years old, majority were males and were married with bachelor's degree and dominantly as permanent in the employment status, and most of them were in 1 to 5 years in service. As a recommendation, the management must be strict in the implementations of policy in the recruitment and selection process. An applicant must be hired only in the basis of merit in order to avoid future-related problems. For SOP number 2, as to recruitment practices, the findings is survey data revealed that the participants often practice the methods of internal recruitment. Supporting the findings of the data was evident by the general combined mean of 3.0. And for external recruitment, survey data revealed that the participants seldom practice the methods of external recruitment. Supporting the findings of the data was evident by the general combined mean of 2.21. For academic qualification, survey data revealed that the participants preferred the academic qualification, a general combined mean of 2.61. As to selection practices, under selection instrument use, survey data revealed that the participants very often use the selection instrument, a general combined mean of 3.26. Selection assessment tools, survey data revealed that the participants often practice the selection assessment tools with a general combined mean of 2.71. For types of interview, survey data revealed that the participants often practice the types of interview with a general combined mean of 2.98. For methods of interview, survey data revealed that the participants often practice the methods of interview with a general combined mean of 2.70. Persons involved in the interview, survey data revealed that the participants often involved in the persons involved in the interview with a general combined mean of 3.0. For characteristics appraised, during the interview, the survey data revealed that the participants always practice in terms of characteristics appraised during the interview with a general combined mean of 3.57. For documentary requirements, survey data revealed that the assessment of participants in terms of documentary requirements got a general combined mean of 3.54 and was interpreted as always practiced. For background investigation, survey data revealed that the assessment of participants in terms of background investigation got a general combined mean of 2.88 and was interpreted as often practiced. For methods of background investigation, survey data revealed the assessment of participants in terms of methods of background investigation got a general combined mean of 2.73 and was interpreted as often practiced. As a conclusion to SOP number 2, the recruitment and selection practices of aircraft mechanics and the general aviation industry, as perceived by the participants in terms of internal recruitment, was often practiced, external recruitment seldom practiced, and academic qualifications were preferred. As a recommendation, to ensure the quality of recruitment and selection practices of aircraft mechanics in the general aviation industry, there should be a standard recruitment and selection policy manual that would serve a general guideline for hiring the most qualified applicants. For SOP number 3, the findings were survey data revealed that the assessment of participants on ensuring an efficient recruitment and selection practices was obtained an overall mean of 3.11 and was interpreted as efficient. This means that the efficiency of recruitment and selection practices plays a crucial role in the growth of the organization. And for the conclusion, as shown by the positive assessment of the participants, the recruitment and selection practices of aircraft mechanics in the general aviation industry were efficient. For recommendation, review and further upgrade regularly the recruitment and selection policy manual so that it would be suited to the changes and needs of the growing organization. For SOP number 4, there was no statistical difference between the perception of aircraft mechanics and administrators in terms of methods of internal recruitment, methods of external recruitment, academic qualification, and selection instrument use, selection assessment tools, types of interview, methods of interview, persons involved in the interview, characteristics appraised during interview, documentary requirements, background investigation, as well as the methods of background investigation. For conclusion, there was no significant differences between the perceptions of aircraft mechanic and human resource management on the recruitment and selection practices. For recommendation, further evaluation and monitoring of recruitment and selection practices should be strengthened and the evaluation must be led by the owner. There must be report to back up the course's action undertaken to speed up the improvement of the practices. For the SOP number 5, the findings were the assessment of participants in terms of government policy for the implementations of standard recruitment and selection practices got a general combined mean of 3.46 and interpreted as always practice. This implies that the implementation of standard recruitment and selection practices ensures that the organization continues to uphold its obligation to give equal opportunity to the applicants. Adherence to this policy is an essential aspect of recruitment and selection process. For the conclusion, the government policies for the implementation of standard recruitment and selection practices in the general aviation industry were always practiced. For recommendation, the management should adopt and follow the government policies for the implementation of standard recruitment and selection practices in the general aviation industry. For SOP number 6, the findings were the result of the study indicates that while the recruitment and selection practices of aircraft mechanics in the general aviation industry were found to be efficient as assessed by the participants, and conclusion, the proposed policy to improve the recruitment and selection practices of aircraft mechanics in the general aviation industry should be formulated. As a recommendation, the management should consider a proposed policy to further improve the recruitment and selection practices of aircraft mechanics in the general aviation industry. That ends my presentation. Thank you so much and God bless.